What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I just want to talk to you guys about some critical things to check on your big bore Magnum revolvers periodically to make sure that they're still functional after shooting them a while. And this is absolutely critical to do if you plan to use your big bore Magnum revolvers in bear country or for any kind of protection against dangerous game. You have to check your firearms to make sure that there's nothing that's about to fail on you that you're not aware of, and you don't want your firearm to fail when you're in the woods or you're in the wilderness and you're surrounded by predatory animals. And at that point, if something fails, you're not going to be able to fix it in the wilderness, okay? Or if we're talking about a collapse of society, SHTF, you're not going to have access to the same tools that you have access to now to make repairs. So you want to keep an eye on certain things, okay? So what I have here is my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum and my 44 Magnum revolvers. Now, I've probably put at least 500 rounds of heavy loads through this 500 Magnum, and I've probably put at least 1,000 rounds through this 44 Magnum snub nose. And when I say 1,000 rounds, I mean full power loads, not, weak underpowered loads. I'm talking hot loads. So that's a lot of rounds through these revolvers. And when you're shooting big bore revolvers like these, Magnum revolvers, they have a lot of recoil, a lot of vibration. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of blast. There's a lot of recoil. And all of those things have a tendency to loosen up some of the critical screws on your revolver. So you want to check a couple of things, okay? First, I'm going to start with my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. So with this one, what I recently noticed is I was taking a look at it, I was cleaning it, and I was just kind of inspecting it. And this screw right here for the rear sight actually backed out quite a bit, and this rear sight was like sticking up like almost 1/4 of an inch. And that's just from, the vibration, the recoil. If you've ever seen any of my videos with this revolver, you'll see that this revolver will flip up completely vertical every time I squeeze that trigger. So there's a lot of recoil with this thing. And so, keep an eye on this screw right here, okay? Make sure that that thing is tightened down. Periodically check that screw, especially if you're going to be traveling and going to an area where you have predatory animals. Make sure that that screw is tightened down at all times. That's one easy thing that you can check, all right? Another thing that happened to me recently with my 44 Magnum is the front sight here started to drift a little bit to the right, okay, because this is a snub nose revolver and it does flip quite a bit. It's pretty lightweight. It's, just under 3 pounds, so it's pretty lightweight. And with the full power bear loads, you're generating almost 1,000 foot-pounds of energy. This thing flips quite a bit. So I noticed that my zero was a little bit off. My point of impact was like 4 inches to the left one day. I went to the range and I was shooting some paper and my point of impact was like 4 inches to the left, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I thought it was just me having a bad shooting day, and I was, not following the fundamentals of marksmanship, and I was slapping the trigger rather than slowly squeezing it. But I shot it a few more times on single action, and I realized that what happened was this front sight here, which has a dovetail, all right, because it's dovetailed in, after 1,000 rounds of, hot loads, it drifted just a little bit, okay? Maybe just like a millimeter, it drifted to the right. And so that caused my point of impact to go to the left, all right? So I had to drift it back and re-zero it, which sucks, but, you know, that's life, you know? But you have to check these things, you know, check your sights, check this screw on the top, like I mentioned. Another thing that happened with this one too is the tensioning screw for the main spring started to loosen up. And when that happened, I was getting light primer strikes, okay, because the screw that keeps the main spring tight, and the main spring is what applies pressure to the hammer and makes sure that your hammer slams down hard enough on the firing pin to get a good detonation on the primer. And what happened was, just, you know, after so many rounds of heavy loads, that screw, okay, which is located right here, and it backed out a little bit. And what happened was the main spring was too loose. There wasn't enough tension on the main spring, and the hammer wasn't hitting the primer with enough force, okay? It wasn't hitting the firing pin with enough force, and then the firing pin wasn't hitting the primer with enough force, so I was getting light primer strikes. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, okay? Your mainspring tension screw, that's critical, guys, okay? Keep an eye on that. Make sure it's not backing out. When in doubt, it's better to tighten up that mainspring screw, and you'll have a heavier double action trigger pull because of that, but at least you'll get reliable primer detonation in any condition, okay? And you know, if you want the utmost reliability and dependability when it comes to bear defense or protection against dangerous game, then you can actually crank down on that mainspring tensioning screw and tighten it all the way, and you're going to have probably like a 15-pound double action trigger pull, but you're going to basically guarantee that you get primer detonation in any condition. But it will be a little bit harder to maintain good groups with that heavy trigger pull on double action. But that's another thing you want to keep an eye on, is that screw there, okay, your mainspring tension screw. Another thing too is just your crane screw right here on the side. This can loosen up after a while, okay? You should be checking this anyway, because you should be cleaning your revolver after every time you go to the range. You should be cleaning it anyway, so you should be, you know, tightening that pretty often anyway. But this can back out on you as well. I've had this back out on my 500. I haven't had it back out on my 44. Okay, so, you know, those are things you want to keep an eye on. Also, this screw right here for the cylinder release, this screw will loosen up over time just from actually, you know, pushing on it so much. You know, that force that you apply over time, this screw will loosen up on you. It seems like it's actually a little bit loose now. So keep an eye on those things, guys. Periodically check your screws. Check your screw up here on your rear sight. Check your cylinder release screw. Most importantly, check your mainspring tension screw, okay, so you're getting enough force on that firing pin. That is just absolutely essential. Check this screw right here, all right? You can also check the side plate screws as well, but those usually don't loosen up from recoil. You know, check your iron sights, you know, periodically double check your zero. And if you're going to be carrying your firearms for bear protection, you should definitely check your zero very often. Or if, let's say, you're planning a hunt to an area that has a lot of bears or something, then you definitely want to double check the zero before you head out on your trip, because you don't want to end up finding out at the wrong time that, you know, your zero is off and your zero got messed up because of the recoil over time drifting out your sights. You know, you can apply red Loctite to hold your front sights if you're really concerned about it. I've thought about doing that for this one. I've done it for other firearms. So that's something that you can do. But that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to just share this information with you. I hope you find it useful. It could save your life. But that's pretty much it, guys. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.